welcome back everyone to another Psych Reacts video. Today we will be jumping into the life of Ted Bundy before his crimes. We'll be studying his upbringing, how he became such a brutal killer, and what he did before he turned into this monster. Now, as you may know, the last video ended up getting blocked. I can still upload that without the clips, so it would just be my commentary and you can watch this video along with mine. So let me know down in the comments if you want to see that. However, today we are looking at World's Most Evil Killers, Season 3, Episode 4, Ted Bundy. This is under the channel Film Rise True Crime. So a little bit of background on Ted Bundy. He was born under the name Theodore Robert Cowell, who was an American serial killer who kidnapped, raped, and murdered numerous young women and girls during the 1970s. He was regarded as handsome and charismatic, traits that he exploited to win the trust of victims and society. He would approach victims in public places, feigning injury or disability, or impersonating an authority figure. He decapitated at least 12 victims and kept some of the severed heads as mementos in his apartment. On a few occasions, he broke into dwellings at night and bludgeoned his victims as they slept. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video.
Seattle, Washington. Ted Bundy began his reign of terror in the Pacific Northwest and spread it across 7 U.S. states. He would eventually confess to the kidnap, rape, and murder of 30 young women between 1974 and 1978.
This is a man who killed in the most violent, the most terrifying way. He would, before death, he would break bones, he would rip parts of the body off, he would keep parts of the body mutilated after he did it. This is a person who ravaged his victims, intending to cause pain.
He was a monster because he just enjoyed killing. One of his interviews, the interviewer asked him point blank, he said, "Ted, why did you kill?" And Ted kind of raised one eyebrow and kind of smiled and says, "Because I liked it."
He was evil, but you could not discern that, even if you knew he was evil. He came across as brilliant, charismatic, smart. So you put together the evil with all of those positive traits, and you have a very dangerous person.
So he mentions how Ted Bundy kind of seems to have two different sides to his personality. One that he shows society and people and his family and friends and all that, and one that only is shown to his victims. This is what the other video that I mentioned earlier kind of touched on, was the fact that there were two sides to Ted Bundy. One was this charismatic, helping, caring, charming young man who seemed to be very thoughtful. Now on the other side was the side that was only shown to his victims. This was the raging, monstrous, brutal figure that was seen in his crimes. This is what I find so interesting about people like Ted Bundy and psychopaths in general, is the fact that they are so capable of blending into society and going unnoticed. Now, like the former sheriff said, looking at him in public, you would not believe that he had this hidden evilness inside. And that's what I find so fascinating. So how did Ted Bundy become this monstrous Ted Bundy? Let's take a look at his upbringing.
This killer's story begins in 1946. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on the 24th of November at the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers in Burlington, Vermont.
This was the 1940s in America. The ideal nuclear family was mum and dad who were married, that nice family unit where everything is very neat and very defined. And people who were outside of that ideal really were stigmatized.
So from being born, Ted Bundy was an illegitimate child. His mother became pregnant outside of being married. Back in the 1940s, like the criminologist mentioned, the whole idea of the perfect American family was the mother, the father, and the kids. This was the nuclear family. This was the American dream. In 1940s, it was frowned upon for a mother to be single, for the dad to not be in the picture, for the dad to be single. It was frowned upon and stigmatized by the public. So the mother wanted to refrain from that stigmatism.
To avoid that judgment, Ted's 22-year-old mother, Eleanor, moved back to her parents' home in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where her parents brought up Ted as their own.
The unusual part of his childhood is how he's raised. He's adopted by his grandparents. He's raised alongside a person who he is told is his sister.
But she wasn't. She was actually his mother.
This arrangement went on for almost 4 years, with Ted's grandparents as his main carers.
His grandfather was quite a violent character, so that suggests to me that very early on in his life, he's almost in a bit of a survival mode. I'm not safe within this home.
Now, this is where his childhood deters from the normal upbringing. He was born out of his mother being married. So she was unwed, which in 1940s, again, it was frowned upon. So to avoid that, his mother tried to create this different situation where her parents were actually Ted's main caregivers. And the mother, she was actually Ted's sister. So from the very beginning, the two main important women in his life, they lied to him from the start, which he doesn't find out till later. So right at the beginning, his own mother abandoned him because she didn't want to be that mother with a child out of being married. This video goes into further issues Ted Bundy had with the main women in his life, so we'll continue on and talk about this once that's brought up.
Just before his 4th birthday, Eleanor moved to Tacoma, Washington. There she met and married Johnny Bundy in 1951. They formally adopted Ted when he was 5 years old. The couple had 4 children together, but Ted reportedly didn't form a close bond with his new family and still believed his mother was his sister.
Ted Bundy is somebody who has always been really conscious of his social class. He came from quite humble beginnings, that the family were quite poor, and he was really quite aware of that and really quite embarrassed and ashamed by it.
An exceptionally bright student, Ted Bundy enrolled in the University of Washington in 1966 to study Chinese. There, aged 20, he met and fell in love with a woman called Stephanie.
This was his dream girl. This was the woman he was going to marry. This is the woman to which he was dedicated. It was romance in the realest sense that you could imagine it.
But she suddenly dumped him.
One of the reasons that she cited was that he wasn't ambitious enough. And I think this would have really hit Ted Bundy quite hard, because this feeds into his anxieties around his social class and those feelings of unease and those feelings of not being good enough. So what we've got happening here is this resentment brewing.
All right, so when he went off to school, he found someone that he truly wanted to fall for, that he truly wanted to marry. But she rejected him because he wasn't ambitious enough in his careers. Now, this took a toll on Ted Bundy's psyche, because if you watch a lot of the Ted Bundy documentaries and videos and clips and all that, you can see how much he really cares for how he is portrayed. For instance, he surrounds himself with important people. He surrounded himself with the governor. He went on to help with the governor's political campaign because he wanted to surround himself with those higher up types of people. So once again, that plays into his anxieties of I'm not good enough. Now, when his mother remarried, she was still considered his sister. They still didn't tell him that his sister is actually his mother. So he was put into this family with John Bundy and their 4 kids. So instantly he's kind of separated from the 4 children and the father, because he thinks it is a brother and sister and the rest are like his cousins. So it's a little bit of a disconnect between the family bonding. He probably felt like an outcast in the family as well, because he didn't know that his sister was actually his mother. So here we have the 2 most important women in his life, the grandmother and the mother, are still lying to him, and then he found somebody he wanted to cherish and love for the rest of his life, supposedly. And she rejects him. So now he has 3 women in his life that rejected him and abandoned him. So this is where that hate towards the women builds. This is where that resentment comes in. This is where you can see the resentment he has towards women in his crimes, with the bashing in the skulls, the brutally raping, and so on and so forth.
Bundy dropped out of university in 1968. The following year, he returned to the East Coast in what he later described as a bid to understand his roots. Whilst there, Bundy unearthed a family secret.
he discovers his true identity. He discovers that the woman that he's considered to be his sister for his whole life is actually his mother. And he discovers his birth certificate, and the birth certificate says he's illegitimate.
The two most important women to him, his mother and his mother's surrogate, and the woman he wanted to marry, in essence, both deny and abandon him. The significance to him of that is that women simply cannot be trusted.
In 1969, aged 22, Bundy returned to the University of Washington and this time enrolled as a psychology major. There he met and started dating a single mother called Elizabeth. Their turbulent relationship would last into the mid-1970s.
Women serve a function for him. They provide a roof over his head, meals on the table, sex, useful contacts with other people. So he has got quite a parasitic lifestyle. He will hook on to particular people and get from them what he wants, and then he will just discard them and move on.
So this is where he now unfolds his true identity. He learns that his sister was actually his mother the whole time. He learns that he was abandoned by his own mother. So I believe it was a forensic psychologist that mentioned that this is where he learns the idea that women can't be trusted. This is because throughout his whole life, the two people that were supposed to love, care, and protect this child, all they did was lie to him because of this image. They didn't want the image of the mother was unwed during this pregnancy. So I wonder if that's where Ted Bundy's image stems from, right? Is like an underlying genetic type of care towards social class. Since the mother was trying to hide Ted as her child, she truly cared about what she looked like to society. So I wonder if Ted Bundy kind of inherited those types of traits from the mother. Like I mentioned before, he is truly engrossed in how society portrays him. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap off this first episode here. If you did watch and enjoy the Ted Bundy intro, the start to Ted Bundy, how Ted Bundy became a monster, be sure to drop a like down below. I truly appreciate all the support. Also, I really hope this video is not blocked. But if you are not already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you know when I upload another video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Anything you would like to see me react to relating to Ted Bundy. We're going to be diving into Ted Bundy, his last interviews, his interview tapes, his confession tapes, his trials, and so much more. So if you're interested in that, once again, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!